Yo, my name is Sam. You may know me as Dope Dad on TikTok, and if you don't, you can find me over there. And I've been wondering what to do with this space that I have on YouTube for a while after growing my following over on TikTok. And I decided the best place for some more long form content is obviously YouTube. And I figured we could read a book together. This book specifically is called All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is one of my favorite authors. This is the third book that I've read from Bell. And if you don't know, if you know me from TikTok, you may already know this, but we have like a book club. We have a Discord space where people that are on particular, like different parts of their healing journey, we can join. It's kind of a support group, kind of a community of like-minded people. And for one of the support levels, if you check the link in my bio, you can join our book club. Sometimes we do books, sometimes we listen to podcasts. This month we're we're watching episodes of Ted Lasso together. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I would join there. But this is gonna be our book for February, next month. A book about love seems appropriate for the month of Valentine's Day and all that mess. And I think today we're gonna get through the intro in chapter 1, and I'll read it out loud. Hopefully you enjoy it. Sometimes I read live on TikTok and people seem to enjoy it. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna pause and take some notes as we go along. So hopefully you like this. If you do, I'm gonna try and post every bit of it. I love Bell Hooks, one of the most transformational authors I have ever written. I hope you enjoy it. And even if you just listen, that's great. If you wanna join the Patreon and join there. And if you're already on the Patreon and you don't have time to get the book and read it yourself, you can listen here. So let's get started. The first love letter I ever wrote was sent to you, just as this book was written to talk to you, Anthony. You have been my most intimate listener. I will love you always. In the Song of Solomon, there is this passage that reads, I found him whom my soul loves. I held him, it would not let him go. To holding on, to knowing again the moment of rapture, of recognition, where we can face one another as we really are, stripped of artifice and pretense, naked and not ashamed. Before anybody asks, I live in the Midwest, but I was born in Alabama, so I have a bit of a Southern accent. So when I said naked there, you may have heard me say naked, because that's just how I say it. Every now and then, people pick up on the accent. Preface. When I was a child, it was clear to me that life was not worth living if we did not know love. I wish I could testify that I came to this awareness because of the love I felt in my life. But it was love's absence that let me know how much love mattered. I was my father's first daughter. At the moment of my birth, I was looked upon with loving kindness, cherished, and made to feel wanted on this earth and in my home. To this day, I cannot remember when that feeling of being loved left me. I just know that one day I was no longer precious. Those who had initially loved me, turned away. The absence of their recognition and regard pierced my heart and left me with a feeling of brokenheartedness so profound I was spellbound. Grief and sadness overwhelmed me. I did not know what I had done wrong, and nothing I tried made it right. That's like the beginning of every attachment issue for a child, right? Like all of a sudden you feel the distance of your parents' love because it just goes away because maybe they think you don't want hugs anymore or you're too old or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like in your child brain trying to figure out like, why don't mom and dad treat me the same way? Like what is going on? And when those patterns are inconsistent and sometimes completely absent, well, it creates a whole host of issues in us as adults. No other connection healed the hurt of that first abandonment, that first banishment from love's paradise. For years, I lived my life suspended, trapped by the past, unable to move into the future. Like every wounded child, I just wanted to turn back time and be in that paradise again. In the moment of remembered rapture, where I felt loved, where I felt a sense of belonging. We can never go back. I know that now. We can go forward. We can find the love our heart longs for. but not until we let go grief about the love we lost long ago. Isn't that true too? Like, okay, so going back to those attachment things, right? Attachment stuff happens in your childhood. And then what I've had to unpack in therapy, one of the things is I'm repeating those same attachment wounds in my adult relationships because I was trying in my adult relationships, like a lot of people, to repair what had happened, what I felt like I lost in my relationship with my parents, you know? And I would say for anybody who hears this and they're like, yeah, dude, like my childhood was a mix. Like there were things that I didn't get, emotional needs not met. But at the other, in some ways, my parents were super supportive, right? Like I grew up hearing that I was told that I was loved regularly. I was told that they were proud of me and things like that. And I hear stories from people that didn't even get that shit. Pardon my language. I cuss sometimes, more than sometimes. And so I say all that to say like these attachment wounds are real. And it doesn't take a lot. Like sometimes we look at our childhood and we compare it to the next person who just had an awful upbringing and we're like, well, it's not fair for me to bring up or take up space. And if you're having troubles in your adult relationships because of stuff that happened when you were a kid, you deserve to have that repair. You deserve to have that love that you want. You deserve to be able to connect in the ways that you've always wanted to. So let's get healed. We can never go back, I know that now. We can go forward. We can find the love our hearts long for, but not until we let go grief about the love we lost long ago, when we were little and had no voice to speak the heart's longing. All the years of my life, I thought I was searching for love I found, retrospectively, to be years where I was simply trying to recover what had been lost, to return to the first home, to get back to the rapture of first love. I was not really ready to love or to be loved in the present. I was still mourning, clinging to the broken-hearted of girlhood, to broken connections. When that mourning ceased, I was able to love again. Sorry for the sirens in the background. I'm sure y'all can hear that. We'll let this one pass. Something's going on out there. I awakened from my trance state and was stunned to find the world I was living in. The world of the present was no longer a world open to love. And I noticed that all around me, I heard testimony that lovelessness had become the order of the day. I feel our nation's turning away from love as intensely as I felt love's abandonment in my girlhood. Turning away, we risk moving into a wilderness of spirit so intense we may never find our way home again. I write of love to bear witness both to the danger in this movement and to call from a return to love. Redeemed and restored, love returns us to the promise of everlasting life. When we love, we can let our hearts speak. Introduction. Grace, touched by love. Maybe we'll just do the preface and the introduction. We'll see how long the introduction is. It is possible to speak with our heart directly. Most ancient cultures know this. We can actually converse with our heart as if we were a good friend. In modern life, we have become so busy with our daily affairs and thoughts that we have lost this essential art of taking time to converse with our heart. Jack Cornfield. On my kitchen wall hang 4 snapshots of graffiti art I first saw on construction walls as I walked to my teaching job at Yale University years ago. The declaration, "The search for love continues, even in the face of great odds," was painted in bright colors. At the time, recently separated from a partner of almost 15 years, I was often overwhelmed by grief so profound it seemed as though an immense sea of pain was washing my heart and soul away. I've been there. Overcome by sensations of being pulled underwater, drowning, I was constantly searching for anchors to keep me afloat, to pull me back to safety to the shore. The declaration on the construction walls with its childlike drawing of unidentifiable animals always lifted my spirits. Whenever I passed this site, the affirmation of love's possibility sprawling across the block gave me hope. Signed with the first name of a local artist, these works spoke to my heart. Reading them, I felt certain the artist was undergoing a crisis in his life, either already confronting loss or facing the possibility of loss. In my head, I engaged in imaginary conversations about the meaning of love with him. I told him how his playful graffiti art anchored me and helped me restore my faith in love. I talked about the way this declaration, with its promise of a love waiting to be found, a love I could still hope for, lifted me out of the abyss I had fallen into. My grief was heavy. Despairing sadness caused by parting from a companion of many years, but, more important, it was a despair rooted in fear that love did not exist and could not be found. And even if it were lurking somewhere, I might never know it in my lifetime. It had become hard for me to continue to believe in love's promise when everywhere I turned, the enchantment of power or the terror of fear overshadowed the will to love. One day, on my way to work, looking forward to the day's meditation on love that the site of the graffiti art engineered, I was stunned to find that the construction company had painted over the picture with a white paint so glaringly bright it was possible to see faint traces of the original art underneath. Upset that what had now become a ritual affirmation of love's grace was no longer there to welcome me, I told everyone of my disappointment. Finally, someone passed on the rumor that the graffiti art had been whitewashed because the words were a reference to individuals living with HIV and that the artist might be gay. Perhaps it is just likely that the men who splashed paint on the wall were threatened by this public confessing of a longing for love, a longing so intense it could not only be spoken, but was deliberately searched for. After much searching, I located the artist and talked with him face to face about the meaning of love. We spoke about how public art can be a vehicle for the sharing of life-affirming thoughts. And we both expressed our grief and annoyance that the construction company had so callously covered up a powerful message about love. It reminds me of the Counting Crows song, right? What is it? Pay paradise to put up a parking lot, which I think was a cover. I don't think it was originally them, but that's what it makes me think of. I lost my place. And we both expressed our grief and annoyance that the construction company had so callously covered up a powerful message about love. To remind me of the construction walls, he gave me snapshots of the graffiti art. From time to time we met, everywhere I had lived, I have placed these snapshots above my kitchen sink. Every day, when I drink water or take a dish from the cupboard, I stand before this reminder that we yearn for love, that we seek it, even when we lack hope that it can really be found. There are not too many public discussions of love in our culture right now. At best, popular culture is the one domain in which our longing for love is talked about. Movies, music, magazines, and books are the place where we turn to hear our yearnings for love expressed. Yet, the talk is not life-affirming discourse of the 60s and 70s which urges us to believe all you need is love. Nowadays, the most popular messages are those that declare the meaningless of love in its irrelevance. A glaring example of this cultural shift was in the tremendously popularity of Tina Turner's song with the title boldly declaring, "What's love got to do with it?" Maybe, I don't know, depending on when you're singing this when you're born, that's a jam. Go to Spotify, look it up. It's good. I remember, it takes me back because my parents loved Tina Turner. So my introduction to Tina Turner goes back to my childhood and listening to it. What's love got to do? So good, man. Just go look it up. I was saddened and appalled when I interviewed a well-known female rapper, at least 20 years my junior, who, when asked about love, responded with biting sarcasm. Love? What's that? I've never had any love in my life. That sucks. Youth culture today is cynical about love, and that cynicism has come from their pervasive feeling that love cannot be found. Expressing this concern in When All You've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough, Harold Kushner writes, "I am afraid that we may be raising a generation of young people who will grow up afraid to love, afraid to give themselves completely to another person, because they will have seen how much it hurts to take the risk of loving and have it not work out. I am afraid that they will grow up looking for intimacy without risk, for pleasure without significant emotional investment. They will be so fearful of the pain of disappointment that they will forego the possibilities of love and joy." That's good, y'all. I'm gonna read it again. I am afraid that we may be raising a generation of young people who will grow up afraid to love, afraid to give themselves completely to another person because they will have seen how much it hurts to take the risk of loving and have it not work out. I am afraid that they will grow up looking for intimacy without risk, for pleasure without significant emotional investment. They will be so fearful of the possibility of the pain of disappointment that they will forgo the possibilities of love and joy. Young people are cynical about love. Ultimately, cynicism is the great mask of the disappointed and betrayed heart. That's good shit. That's good. Cynicism, we're going to underline that. Cynicism is the great mask of the disappointed and betrayed heart. See why I love bell hooks so much? That is good. That is good stuff right there. I'll put this cap on because I don't want to get on my bed. When I travel around the nation giving lectures about ending racism and sexism, audiences, especially young listeners, become agitated when I speak about the place of love in any movement for social justice. Indeed, all the great movements for social justice in our society have strongly emphasized a love ethic. Yet, young listeners remain reluctant to embrace the idea of love as a transformative force. I got a noisy street. Apologies. To them, love is for the naive, the weak, the hopelessly romantic. Their attitude is mirrored in the grown-ups they turn to for explanations. As spokesperson for Delusion Generation, Elizabeth Wurtzel asserts in Bitch, in Praise of Difficult Women, that's the name of the book, Bitch, in Praise of Difficult Women. None of us are getting better at loving, we are getting more scared of it. We were never given good skills to begin with, and the choices we make have tended only to reinforce our sense that it is hopeless and useless. Her words echo all that I hear an older generation say about love. When I talked about love with my generation, I found it made everyone nervous or scared, especially when I spoke about not feeling loved enough. On several occasions, as I talked about love with friends, I was told I should consider seeing a therapist. I understood that a few friends were simply wary of me bringing up the topic of love and felt that if I saw a therapist, it would give them a break. But most folks were just frightened of what might be revealed in any exploration of the meaning of love in our lives. Whenever a single woman over 40 brings up the topic of love again and again, the assumption, rooted in sexist thinking, is that she is desperate for a man. No one thinks she is simply passionately, intellectually interested in the subject matter. No one thinks she is rigorously engaged in philosophical undertaking wherein she is endeavoring to understand the metaphysical meaning of love in everyday life. No, she is just seen as on the road to a fatal attraction. It makes me think, one of the things I've been exploring for a little bit now, and it involves love, but it's just like how often we think that love is only found in like a couple ways, right? And so kind of like she's saying here that it's like, oh, you must want romantic love, and romantic love is great. I have an amazing partner that we're long distance right now, and they're incredible. They are so generous with how they show love and give love, and it's amazing. Yet, like, how much pressure does that put on one person to be like your only source of love, right? And so I've been like also trying to work, as I've been like working on myself and trying to heal some of my own wounds, is not only to develop healthy love with my partner, but also develop like really healthy senses of love with other relationships, with my friends, right? With my kids, because all of us, like, if we can tap into that, are within ourselves a source of love, you know? So a lot of that is like, where can I find support? Where can I find camaraderie? Where can I find like healthy and safe touch, right? Like, can you imagine like if you're like feeling kind of touch starved or whatever, and you just want a good hug, but you only rely on one person to give you hugs, and that person, in my case, lives across the country? It's like, no, that's a recipe for, you know, emotional distress and disaster, and can probably make some of those attachment wounds, if you have them, even worse, right? Like, even so, So it's one of the things I've been trying to do is like cultivate not just healthy relationships, but healthy and loving relationships. Because I can have a healthy relationship with a coworker. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's loving. Yeah, let's keep going. Disappointment and pervasive feelings of brokenheartedness led me to begin thinking more deeply about the meaning of love in our culture. My longing to find love did not make me lose my sense of reason or perspective. It gave me the incentive to think more, to talk about love, and to study popular and more serious writing on the subject. As I pored over nonfiction books on the subject of love, I was surprised to find that the vast majority of revered books ones use as reference works, and even those popular as self-help books, have been written by men. All my life I had thought of love as primarily a topic women contemplate with greater intensity and vigor than anybody else on the planet. I still hold this belief, even though visionary female thinking on the subject has yet to be taken as seriously as the thoughts and writings of men. Men theorize about love, but when women are more often love's practitioners. Most men feel that they receive love and therefore know what it feels like to be loved. Women often feel we are in constant state of yearning, wanting love but not receiving it. Now, I am a man, so I can't speak to the experience of women, but one of the things that I also learned in therapy is that it's kind of like she's saying here, is a lot of my ideas of what I wanted in a relationship or thought I was feeling or whatever were living in my head. They were concepts, right? And so those concepts are fine, and they do reflect a truth. They do reflect something that I thought was desirable or whatever. But a big part for me in my healing that was instrumental was learning to feel things in my body, to get out of my head and to feel my feelings. If you've ever heard a therapist say that, it's the most annoying thing in the world. Because it's hard to do, especially if you were raised in such a way where your feelings were never centered, right? Like if it was like, oh, you're being too sensitive. Oh, don't be a sissy. Oh, don't cry. It's no big deal. That like trains you over time to desensitize yourself to what is going on in your body, to what is going on in your feeling. And so one of the things I've had to learn in therapy, which is to connect back to my body, to connect back to my emotions and how they feel, and then following those feelings in a way to like figure out what really brings me joy, what really lights me up, right? So even like if I were to close my eyes right now and I were to begin to like focus on something that makes me happy, on a place that makes me happy, I can tell you what that is. It's the mountains. I love the mountains. Beaches are fine. I will do a beach vacation. They're great. But put me in the mountains. Put me in the sound of trees, in the tweets of birds, right? Put me near a waterfall or a stream that I can hear in the distance. And even when I like visualize that, I feel my body like loosen up. And that's a cue to me that that is something that brings me peace, right? That brings me joy. That's an environment that I thrive in. And so one of my goals is to be in that environment as much as possible because it's something I love. So then in my relationships, it's the same sort of exercise. Like what is something that I feel compelled to do in relationships because I've been told that's what I'm supposed to do in relationships versus what I actually want to do in relationships because it feels right for me. Those are two different things. And so I had to kind of like she's saying here, theorize a lot less, even though those theories are valid and they're helpful. And I had to practice a lot more. And that practice started with me, started with figuring out what I love, what I enjoy. In philosopher Jacob Needleman's Primer, a little book about love, virtually all the major narratives of love he comments on are written by men. Let me take a water break. Did y'all see that? I'm leaving that in. I don't edit shit here. The water, like the way it hit the cup, it splashed back up in my face. His list of significant references doesn't include books written by women. Throughout my graduate school training for doctorate in literature, I can recall only one woman poet being extolled as a high priestess of love, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She was, however, considered a minor poet. Yet even in the most non-literary students among us knew the opening line of her most well-known sonnet. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. This was in pre-feminist days. In the wake of the contemporary feminist movement, the Greek poet Sappho was now becoming enshrined as another love goddess. Back then, in every creative writing course, the poets dedicated to the love poem were always male. Indeed, the partner I left after many years first courted me with a love poem. He had always been emotionally unavailable and not at all interested in love as either a topic for discussion or daily life practice, but he was absolutely confident that he had something meaningful to say on the subject. That's kind of like she was talking about before. Like, in theory, like, I can say all the right things about love, but do you believe them? Do you feel them? Do you know how to live in such a way that they like come from within you, right? It's totally different, man. Totally different. And on another note of connecting back to your feelings and your body, it is trippy. It is trippy as fuck. But it's cool. Where was I? Say on the subject. I, on the other hand, thought all my grown-up attempts to write love poems were mushy and pathetic. Words failed me when I tried to write about love. My thoughts seemed sentimental, silly, and superficial. When writing poetry in my girlhood, I had felt the same confidence. I would come to see in my adult life only in male writers. When I first began to write poetry, man, sometimes this accent, it just pops back out unexpected. When I first began to write poetry in girlhood, I thought love was the only topic, the most important passion. Indeed, the first poem I published at age 12 was called A Look at Love. Somewhere along the way, in the passage from girlhood to womanhood, I learned females really had nothing serious to teach the world about love. Death became my chosen topic. No one around me, professors and students alike, doubted a woman's ability to be serious when it came to thinking and writing about death. All the poems in my first book were on the topic of death and dying. Even so, the poem that opened the book, The Woman's Mourning Song, was about the loss of a loved one and the refusal to let death destroy memory. Contemplating death has always been a subject that leads me back to love. Significantly, I began to think more about meaning of love as I witnessed the deaths of many friends, comrades, and acquaintances, many of them dying young and unexpectedly. When I was approaching the age of 40 and facing the type of cancer, oh man. She was talking about death. I had a friend pass away recently, unexpectedly and suddenly. And it's probably the first person that I was close to in adulthood. And like, his name is Jeff. He has 3 boys and his wife who are, doing the best they can. But Jeff is like just a bright spot everywhere he went, everywhere he lived. He was a person. Like, when I talked about like theory, but then actually believing things in your heart, he was the person where his head and his heart were like, they were just aligned. And so when he talked about community and having a passion for it, it followed in his actions. And when you were in community with him, you just felt better. You felt warm. You felt invited. You felt cared for. You felt seen. And so, yeah. And it was like just last week. So, yeah. Yeah, Jeff is not with us anymore. Rest in power, Jeff. I digress. This is what you're going to get. When I was approaching the age of 40 and facing the type of cancer scares that have become so commonplace in women's lives, they are practically routine. My first thought as I waited for test results was that I was not ready to die because I had not yet found the love my heart had been seeking. Shortly after this crisis ended, I had a grave illness that was life-threatening. Confronting the possibility of dying, I became obsessed with the meaning of love in my life and in contemporary culture. My work as a culture critic offered me a constant opportunity to pay close attention to everything the mass media, particularly movies and magazines, tell us about love. Mostly they tell us that everyone wants love, but that we remain totally confused about the practice of love in everyday life. In popular culture, love is always the stuff of fantasy. Maybe this is why men have done the most theorizing about love. Fantasy has primarily been their domain, both in the sphere of cultural production and in everyday life. Male fantasy is seen as something that can create reality, whereas female fantasy is regarded as pure escape. Hence, the romantic novel remains the only domain in which women speak of love with any degree of authority. However, when men appropriate the romance genre, their work is far more rewarded than is the writing of women. A book like The Bridges of Madison County is a supreme example. Had a woman penned the sentimental, shallow story of love, which did, though, have its moments, it is unlikely it would have ever become such a major mainstream success, crossing all boundaries of the genre. Of course, consumers of books about love are primarily female. Yet male sexism alone does not explain the lack of more books by and about love written by women. Apparently, women are both willing and eager to hear what men have to say about love. Female sexist thinking may lead a woman to feel she already knows what another woman will say. Such a reader may feel that she has more to gain by reading what men have to say. Earlier in my life, I read books about love and never thought about the gender of the writer. Eager to understand what we mean when we speak of love, I did not really consider the extent to which gender shaped a writer's perspective. It was only when I began to think seriously about the subject of love and to write about it that I pondered whether women do this differently than men. Reviewing the literature on love, I noticed how few writers, male or female, talk about the impact of patriarchy, the way in which male domination of women and children stands in the way of love. John Bradshaw's Creating Love, The Next Great Stage of Growth, is one of my favorite books on the topic. He valiantly attempts to establish the link between male domination, the institutionalization of patriarchy, and the lack of love of families. Famous for works that call attention to the inner child. I've done a lot of inner child work too. That's trippy too. Y'all get on that inner child train. It is nuts. I lost my place. Bradshaw believes that ending patriarchy is one step in the direction of love. However, his work on love has never received ongoing attention and celebration. It did not get the notice given work by men who write about love while affirming sexist-defined gender roles. Profound changes in the way we think and act must take place if we are to create a loving culture. Men writing about love always testify that they have received love. They speak from this position. It gives what they say authority. Women, more often than not, speak from a position of lack, of not having received the love we long for. A woman who talks of love is still suspect. Perhaps this is because all that enlightened women may have to say about love will stand as a direct threat and challenge to the vision men have offered us. I enjoy what male writers have to say about love. I cherish my Rumi and my Rilke, male poets who stir the hearts with their words. Men often write about love through fantasy, through what they imagine is possible rather than what they concretely know. We know that Rilke did not write as he lived, that so many words of love offered us by great men fail us when we come face to face with reality. And even though John Gray's work troubles me and makes me mad, I confess to reading and rereading Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. But like many women and men, I want to know about the meaning of love beyond the realm of fantasy, beyond what we imagine can happen. I want to know love's truths as we live them. Almost all the recent popular self-help writing by men on love, from works like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, to John Welmove's Love and Awakening, make use of feminist perspectives on gender roles. Ultimately, though, the authors remain wedded to the belief systems which suggest that there are basic inherent differences between women and men. I used to believe that stuff too. The more I learn that's not true. In actuality, all the concrete proof indicates that while the perspectives of men and women often differ because those are socialized aspects, These differences are learned characteristics, not innate or natural traits. It's a big red flag for me when I'm talking to someone and they talk about any people group, even themselves, and they go, well, it's in our nature. And I'm like, what do you mean by that, man? Let's talk about it some more. Let's unpack that. You know what I mean? Because even if it was, don't you want to transcend your nature? Don't you want to be better than what you're programmed to be? I do. If the notion that men and women were absolute opposites, inhabiting totally different emotional universes were true, men would never have become the supreme authorities on love. Given gender stereotypes that assign to women the role of feelings and being emotional, and to men the role of reason and non-emotional, real men would shy away from the talk of love. Design on this cup is weird, man. It didn't get me that time, but it still kind of splashed, whatever. Though considered the established authorities on the subject, only a few men talk freely, telling the world what they think about love. In everyday life, males and females alike are relatively silent about love. Our silence shields us from uncertainty. We want to know love. We are simply afraid to desire to know too much about love. To know too much about love will lead us closer and closer to the abyss of lovelessness. Man, I am getting tongue-tied. Apologies, folks. While ours is a nation wherein the vast majority of citizens are followers of religious faiths that proclaim the transformative power of love, many people feel that they do not have a clue as how to love. And practically everyone suffers a crisis of faith when it comes to realizing biblical theories about the art of loving in everyday life. It is far easier to talk about loss than to talk about love. It is easier to articulate the pain of love's absence than to describe its presence and meaning in our lives. I'm going to think about that. Because even I think of my partner primarily, and it is easier to go like what I would be missing if they weren't in my life, right? As opposed to, this is what it feels like in the present to love you and be loved by you. Like that requires like more thinking. Maybe it's a thing I should try to set as like a meditation almost, like to wake up in the morning and spend a couple minutes being like, what does love feel like with me today? Yeah. If you try it, let me know. Taught to believe that the mind, not the heart, is the seat of learning, many of us believe that to speak of love with any emotional intensity means we will be perceived as weak and irrational. That's true. Highlight. Taught to believe that the mind, not the heart, is the seat of learning, many of us believe that to speak of love with any emotional intensity means that we will be perceived as weak and irrational. And it is especially hard to speak of love when what we have to say calls attention to the fact that lovelessness is more common than love. That many of us are not sure what we mean when we talk of love or how to express it. We'll just put that guy right there. Stay there, buddy. I thought I was getting better. Everyone wants to know more about love. We want to know what it means to love, what we can do in our everyday lives to love and be loved. We want to know how to seduce those among us who remain wedded to lovelessness and to open the door to their hearts to let love enter. The strength of our desire does not change the power of cultural uncertainty. Everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we are bombarded by its failure. In the realm of the political, among the religious, in our families, and in our romantic lives, we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or keeps us together. You got work to do. Everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we are bombarded by its failure. In the realm of the political, among the religious, in our families, and in our romantic lives, we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or keeps us together. This bleak picture is in no way alters the nature of our longing. We still hope that love will prevail. We still believe in love's promise. Just as the graffiti proclaimed, our hope lies in the reality that so many of us continue to believe in love's power. We believe that it is important to know love. We believe it is important to search for love's truths. In an overwhelming number of private conversations and public dialogues, I have given and heard testimony about the mounting lovelessness in our culture and the fear it strikes in everyone's heart. This despair about love is coupled with a callous cynicism that frowns upon any suggestion that love is as important as work, as crucial to our survival as a nation, as the drive to succeed. Awesomely, our nation, like no other in the world, is a culture driven by the quest to love. It's the theme of our movies, music, literature, even as it offers little opportunity for us to understand love's meaning or know how to realize love in word or in deed. Our nation is equally driven by sexual obsession. There is no aspect of sexuality that is not studied, talked about, or demonstrated. How-to classes exist for every dimension of sexuality, even masturbation. Yet schools for love do not exist. Everyone assumes that we will know how to love instinctively, but then those attachment wounds get in the way, and man, fuck everything up. That's not what Bell says. That was me. I added that. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, we still accept the family is the primary school for love. Those of us who do not learn how to love among family are expected to experience love in romantic relationships. However, this love often eludes us, and we spend a lifetime undoing the damage caused by cruelty, neglect, and all manner of lovelessness experienced in our families of origin and in relationships where we simply did not know what to do. One of the things that has been helpful in my own healing, in my own growth, is to learn to give compassion to myself. And that's what I mean, like everybody is a source of love. And so I feel that I have a greater capacity to love others in as much that I have grown the capacity to love myself. So talking about inner child work a little bit, like learning, because we kind of hide those parts of ourselves. We're like, man, I was stupid, I didn't know, and we push down, right? But instead, the mental exercise, the emotional exercise there is to actually lift that part of you up and to love it and embrace it, because that's all it wanted. It wanted safety, it wanted security, it wanted to be seen and to valued and to know that it was important. And the awesome thing about that is that you get to be the person. You get to be the person that looks at 5-year-old you, 10-year-old you, 12-year-old you, whatever year-old you, and maybe it's multiple yous, and you get to look at them, and you get to grab their sweet little faces, and you get to say, I love you. I see you. I know you. I accept you. Because, friends, when you think about the things you went through as a child that are showing up in yourself as an adult, and you know maybe you have trauma there, you have wounding there, you have work to do there, who knows better than you what it felt like? Like, who knows the feelings and the emotions better than you? And you, as an adult, you maybe have a hard time. I did, identifying your emotions. But you've learned new skills before, so you can learn new skills again. You can learn to identify your emotions. You can learn to feel them in your body. And then you get to look to the old parts of yourself, and you get to go, I know exactly what you are going through. Because you do, because it was you, right? And then think that version of you, even if they made a bunch of horrible decisions, they made the decisions they had to based on what they knew, based on what they were going through, with the skills that they had. They adapted, they grew, they evolved, they overcome, they picked up new tools and skills where they had to. And sometimes when we get to this point of life and we're questioning a lot of things, it's easy to forget that the reason we're here is because we were capable, because we were competent, even if people told us we were incompetent. We did survive. We did make it. And so if you get to look at old you and send that love, right? And that old version of you is also the person who got you to where you are. And then the trippy part is when you think that there is another version of you that is doing the same thing for you now. And so it creates this thing where you are loving who you used to be, loving who you are in the present, and loving the person that you will be one day. And then you get to extend that love to others. And I know it sounds trippy. I know it sounds woo-woo. Like there's people I've met that like literally believe like you're talking to an old version of yourself, right? Like somehow metaphysics or whatever, you're there and the best, highest version of yourself is with you now. And I don't know if I believe that. Like I would say I don't. But what I have learned is the way our bodies work and our brains work, is that if you can conceptualize it well enough, if you can feel it to your brain body, it doesn't make a difference, right? So you can heal old trauma today, even though it may have happened many years ago, because as far as your body goes, it's happening, right? So if you know, and I'm a nobody, I just happen to be good at relaying and communicating what I've learned and like managing my autistic brain to break down concepts for people. But we know that trauma, if you have like PTSD, that when someone has a PTSD episode, that as far as their brain goes, they are back in that moment. That moment that happened 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, as far as their whole system goes, is happening right now. That same mechanism that our crazy, miraculous bodies that are wonderful and amazing, but also a pain in the ass sometimes. That same mechanism is the mechanism that you can use to heal those old wounds, right? So when 10-year-old you is scared because you went through a traumatic divorce and you're going through a divorce now, and all of those same things, you get to turn back to yourself and you get to go, yeah, that did happen. That was hard. But I was there with you and you're here with me now. And guess what? The big difference now is I can take care of you. You're going to be safe because you're with me. And then think about that. Think about that. I'm not even talking about the book anymore. Like this is all coming. But then like you get to be the one who establishes safety for you. You get to be the one who establishes connection for you. You get to be the one who establishes love for you. And you start becoming secure within your own self. It's powerful shit. All right, we're coming up on an hour. I'm going to finish this. We only got one more page. We're not doing the next chapter. But where did I go? However, love, relationship simply did not. Yeah, we simply did not know what to do. So be kind to yourself. You didn't know any better. You were a kid. How were you supposed to know if no one ever taught you anything? Only love can heal the wounds of the past. However, the intensity of our woundedness often leads to a closing of the heart, making it impossible for us to give or receive the love that is given to us. To open our hearts more fully to love's power and grace, we must dare to acknowledge how little we know of love in both theory and practice. We must face the confusion and disappointment that much of what we were taught about the nature of love makes no sense when applied to daily life. Contemplating the practice of love in everyday life, thinking about how we love and what is needed for ours to become a culture where love's sacred presence can be felt everywhere, I wrote this meditation. As the title, All About Love, New Visions indicates, we want to live in a culture where love can flourish. We yearn to end the lovelessness that is so pervasive in our society. This book tells us how to return to love. All About Love, New Visions provides radical new ways to think about the art of loving, offering a hopeful, joyous vision of love's transformative power. It lets us know what we must do to love again, gathering love's wisdom. It lets us know what we must do to be touched by love's grace. There you go. There's your preface and introduction. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Any of those things that I kind of went on a tangent about, if you want to talk more about those, I can definitely talk more about those. Also, if you want to follow me on TikTok, search for Dope Dad. I do like little bite-sized chunkies there, kind of doing the same thing I do here, except of course within the 3-minute limit. And if you liked this book and you want to join us on our Discord page, you can join through Patreon. There is like the lowest tier is like, hey, just come hang out. The tier up from that, you get book club access. And I also do offer a one-on-one if you're going through transitions, going through a tough time, and you need someone to be a peer, to hear you, to listen, to give perspective. I offer those services as well. Just the same things that I've learned to start giving myself. In the meantime, until the next video, you are worthy of love. You are always worthy of love. And whoever told you you weren't, that's their business. They struggled to love themselves, and so they didn't know how to love you. But from the moment you entered into existence, you were worthy of love. Grace and peace.